here's the thing. We're not in danger of the economy going to zero. Everybody's employed. So understand we're moving to a different mindset than we've had for the last 20 to even 40 years. In the last 40 years, we've been trying to grow. We've been trying to scale. And I'm not saying that you can't, but in that growth and scale, the vast majority of businesses were just trying to grow by keeping their share of the growth.
Hello and welcome to Outer Spaces, a podcast dedicated to empowering designers and contractors in the outdoor living space. I am on a mission to scour the globe to find and interview the most brilliant mindset coaches, sales strategists, and business leaders alive, and present them in a way that landscapers, hardscapers, and outdoor living pros can immediately put them into use to grow and thrive. On Outer Spaces, we are passionate about breaking the chains of small mindsets and helping contractors just like you take control of their businesses and their lives. My name is Joshua Gillow, and through my 27 years of dirt under the nails experience, I look forward to sharing tips, strategies, and other contractor success stories here on the Outer Spaces podcast. Now, let's get on with the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Outer Spaces podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow, and this week we have Greg Crabtree back on from Simple Numbers 2.0. Now, Greg's been a regular here on the show. We love to bring him in every quarter or every third of a year or so and talk about the, where the market's at right now, what we should be watching as contractors, what is inflation doing to our ability to serve and a cost structure. And today, Greg comes on and he talks a lot about stuff, including if you're working with subcontractors, how to figure out what your margin would be for marking that subcontractor up as part of your package to your client. So if that's something that you do or you're looking to get more into, this is a great episode to look through that. Plus, you get a great state of the market, if you will, with Greg Crabtree. So listen on and enjoy. Hey, Greg, I'm so excited to have you here back on the show and to dive in today to exactly where we are right now. It's 2024. It's April 1st. And, there's a lot of skepticism out in the market right now. There's a lot of contractors, a lot of landscapers, hardscapers, outdoor living pros that are out there. Some are seeing work starting now, coming in, new calls and all that happening. And others are just waiting for the phone to ring. So I'd love to unpack that with you today, what you're seeing out there as you look through your 100 company model, your crystal ball, if you will, to the world, and to get a better sense of what you're seeing and what the next 6 months might be like for our industry.
Yeah, sure. I think right now, and certainly, when it comes into the contractor, part of the world, what most of them are seeing, depending on what type of contractor they are, there's always, the spring blooms with activity. And so there's a little bit of things are active, but not nearly as active as they have been. And a lot of this is also geographic. If you're in an area where there is significant, movement, inbound activity, those are certainly more active than others. But when it comes to contractors, you've got to kind of split it into, the renovation folks are staying fairly steady. There's a steady demand, but they come off of their high. If you're a sub to those people, you're staying steady, but you're coming off of that high. So I think from that standpoint, the trades will be okay. As you get into trades where you're trying to be professional in an area where two guys in a truck can sometimes compete with you, that's where we're seeing people, get aggressive on pricing. Is the independent guy out there. That's where we've seen people really offer lower prices and make kind of being the premium provider in a particular area of specialty a little difficult to get the prices that you were getting when the market was hot, and if you could show up you could get a premium price. And so I think that's kind of the first thing I would see. In terms of new home construction, it's a little bit hit or miss, and so depending on what part of the market that you're in, I think the new home folks, I talked to a builder the other day up in the northern part of the country, and his comment was, I should have moved south 5 years ago, and it's a little bit late to do that. So anyway, we'll see kind of how it we'll see how that goes. But it's going to be one of those where, I think you're going to have to work harder at what I call active selling, working the market, talking to people, and then seeing where you go from there. And, but I think that's kind of the read where I've got it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've been, working with our students and talking about this being a year, specifically a year where every sale counts. Like every single chance you go out to speak with somebody, it's going to have to count, and your time is going to be more valuable than ever right now to pour into the ones that truly are willing to move forward and looking to move forward to do something. So, time is of the essence at this point, not to be wasting with people who aren't able to say yes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Now, do you think that the interest rates, I know right now interest rates are kind of flattish, high
Mm-hmm.
but flattish. Do you think that that's impacting our clients' ability to say yes?
Somewhat, but I think the bigger issue is that people are still adapting to a significant impact of inflation on their spending. I mean, food, eating out has gone up dramatically. Anything, um, um, and so I really think, um, you know, that's really the bigger that's really the bigger issue is people are running out of money first,
Mm-hmm.
and so if they could finance it, then it would help a bit. But the interest cost is less of an issue as it is that I think people are just pulling back a little bit. Now we're starting to see some stabilization in people managing their money in discretionary spending. So I think from that standpoint, I would say you're going to see a little bit of a pickup in moderation of demand, but it won't be excessive. Um, you know, So anyway,
That makes perfect sense. No, it makes perfect sense. And, I know just going to the grocery store, what used to cost me 100, 125 is now over $200 every time we leave the grocery store. And,
correct.
for a lot of people, they aren't seeing a difference in their income. They're just seeing a difference in their expenses, which all are going up. Nothing is getting cheaper. So,
Mm-hmm.
you start to see people pulling back and thinking twice about spending on additional things. So I can understand that. And we're finally starting to have some of our clients pulling HELOCs and things out of their property, trying to go back in for some equity in order to fund
Right.
projects, right? So you're starting to see that again for the last year and a half after, the big COVID bump, that choked out as they saw interest rates skyrocketing and like, holy moly, what used to be 3% is now 6, 7, 8%. And the cost of the interest
Right.
alone
Right.
was enough to shock you. And it's like, all right, let's just pause. Let's wait until things start to balance off, and then we can try to figure it out from there. So we're starting to see those doors starting to open. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah. So here's the thing. I do think that you're going to see the Fed come up with a way to do some interest rate cuts. Pretty over these next 2 quarters. They've got to get cuts in, by second and third quarter so that it's not deemed to be political, although it would be political, but I don't care. I'd like to see interest rates get cut. Market will figure it out from there. I mean, I think if you get 2 quarter interest point cuts, it could bring mortgage rates down as much as a point, in sometimes. And I think that's going to be critical, to be helpful, in the process. And if you get that, that'll create some energy. You'll see some quick refinancing. Anytime you get at least a 1% drop, anybody who's financed something, when the rates have been 7, they'll quickly refi, and pick up a little bit. Um, but still, I mean, I think we're fighting this constant inflation battle with wages. Um, um, so I think, from that standpoint, it's going to be one of those situations where, I was trying to think how I'd phrase this. Um, um, you know, as wages go up, that's giving people more purchasing power, but it's creating more inflation. And so these two things are like two dogs chasing themselves around and around in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't see us getting out of that. Now, what I do see is the market what it's finding is an equilibrium. And I've seen this with a couple of clients where I've had to show them their 2019 activity to calm them down as to how things are going now versus what it's been doing the last 3 years. I said, hey, you're just back to where you were in 2019. It's okay. That this is just the new reality of where it is. So,
Yeah, no, exactly. That's there's a lot of cycles going on, right? Like trying to get back to before the 2020 big boost with COVID and everything, especially in our contracting world, things has exploded, and now they're kind of coming back to more of a normal pace, but with a lot higher interest rate, a lot higher inflationary rate in our market. So now it becomes another struggle. So, Greg, have you noticed? I know, how many years have you been doing this kind of thing? How many years you've been in, like, for
45-ish, somewhere around there. Yeah.
45. So you've seen a couple of election cycles.
Yeah.
Do you see any common things that happen during election cycles when it comes to especially contracting? Like, what should we be thinking as business owners being an election year? Do we have a solid year coming? Is it bouncy toward the time we get to the election itself? Like, what should we be preparing for?
I mean, I think I don't think you can look at this election cycle and and treat it like the others because there's just so many moving pieces right now. And so I would be careful to play the election cycle business strategy game. And so what we're telling clients right now is, listen, the best thing to do, just get profitable with what you got. And I think there's enough activity in most of the trades right now that I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be focused on trying to grow as much as I would be just try to be profitable with this demand level that's there. If I see an opportunistic moment, if I to expand, try to make it to where I can flex up and flex down. So that generally in the contractor world means I'm going to use that with contracted labor or temporary labor of some sort that I can then reset back to my core. But I've got to make it to where my core is profitable and fully capitalized.
Got it. So if I hear you right, you're saying if you're a contractor out there and you see you have extra business come in, instead of trying to hire and bring it into overhead or cost structure to subcontract that work out. Am I hearing that correctly? So you can flex with and then come back to that core.
And to a large degree, I mean, it's the reason why the contractor model is structured the way it is now anyway. It is the only, you're flexing labor that you don't permanently commit to. I mean, that's the whole concept of a contractor model. Now, there's good and bad to that. I mean, we teach our clients who are in the contractor world that if I have enough consistent work to self-perform a particular skill set, I can make more money if I can keep somebody 70+% utilized. Sometimes even 50% or more utilized. But when it gets down into, situations where, you have too much volatility in demand, that's really where I've got to go to the contractor approach. And essentially you get to a business model that we teach that it's not unique by me. I was taught this by one of my clients, actually, is a concept that said in the value of a transaction, there's four things that happen. Now, this isn't cost, this is value. The first 20% of the dollars in a transaction are the marketing value. Value, features, benefits is communicated to the market that get you a lead. 10% is taking that lead and closing it and getting a sale. 10% is the oversight and the management of the transaction to completion, and 60% is the product or service. And you can actually use that 20, 10, 10, 60 concept when you're disaggregating a business activity. I don't want to do everything from the marketing to the selling to the managing to the doing. I want to have somebody else do it. And sometimes I need to go off. If I need to market it, sell it, do it, and oversee it, I need 40 cents of the transaction value. The doing it gets 60. And if the doer manages it and I just have to market it, sell it, and throw it over the wall and let them handle it, and I don't have anything else to do with it after that, okay, then it's 70-30 and so forth. Now you can plus those or minus them, but not a lot. I mean, you're going to see consistently, there's people that try to do, in the contracting world, I'm going to take a 20% cut of that. Well, if all you had to do was market it and you didn't have to close it, price it, quote it, then that's fine. But if you have to price it and quote it, you better be trying to get 25 to 30% of that cut, and take care of that. And so once again, that's really kind of how the industry has kind of worked itself out, and and so um, I think those are good things for people to understand when you decide what am I doing everything soup to nuts? Am I doing a piece of it, and who am I working with, and how to share that workload?
I love that. I love how you break that up, that
Yep.
20, 10, 10, 60. As most of our work is done through that subcontracting model. So with that being the case, now it's always a question of, well, what should be your margin? How much should you
Mm-hmm.
mark up that labor when you're selling, an entire company to do a chunk of a project? And I like how you break that down with that 20, 10, 10, 60. So basically based on that model, we should be marking up 40% at a minimum. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Got it. Cool. That's good. So anybody out there listening to subcontracting work out or expanding without bringing people in, it's a great point right
Yeah,
now to know that
absolutely.
if you're just marking up 10% moving it through the company, that's great. But are you really, paying yourself what you need to be doing for all the time that it takes to market it, to sell it, to manage it, and then to hand it off for someone to build? So that's a great point. I like that. So what are you looking at for like the next 6 months? What does it look like for you right now as you're seeing the 100 company model? Are we moving in a more favorable way? Are we moving in a tougher way? More struggle coming? Like where do you see it heading?
Well, what we see is an upstairs downstairs market. So our latest data we track about $1 billion of revenue in our 100 company model. And so we started separating it a few months ago between the companies that are up year over year and the companies that are down year over year. And so the companies that are up, they make up 67% of the billion. The companies that are down make up 33%. Historically, that number has bounced. When I look back over the last 5 years, that number has been between 80 to 85% have been up year over year. And so
Okay.
we're almost double of the number of companies that are down year over year right now, coming off of, and it's hard to tell, is it actually market flattening? Probably is. I mean, my belief. But in a service-based economy, I'll give the economists some latitude. It's really hard to measure GDP in a service-based economy because we're
Mm-hmm.
not making widgets. We don't make things that are easy to count. And the vast majority, I think, of what the government is counting as GDP growth is really just inflation,
Wow.
in reality. But there again, I mean, it's a tough number to know. But my belief is it's inflation. I think the overall economy is flat to even slightly down.
Okay.
If I'm looking at the data that I see now, and so the upstairs downstairs, the group that's up doing great. They're up 14% this year over last year. Probably 10% of that 14 is price increases. Not actual increase. The others are picking up new work. The clients that we have that truly are advancing, it's because their competitors are failing. And so that there's several instances of that in our client base where that's happening. And so the group that's in the ups are typically what we refer to as the necessaries. HVAC companies, IT, people that are, electrical, plumbing, core services, that are always there, and so, those are the ones that are solid. The ones that are down, anything that's discretionary, the
Yeah.
things that I can postpone, do without. I'm demand dependent, on what's going on. And so those are the ones that I worry about. Now, typically retail, restaurants, are facing a lot of that. Restaurants, as much as they're trying to up their prices, they're finding it a hard slog to get all of their cost increases through into their prices. And some are having shocked moments by their customers that you'll see viral, post on social media, about, I can't believe this costs this much. Well, I got news for you. It does. If you
Yeah.
want that business to stay in business, that's actually what it does cost. And so I think what you're going to see is in all the discretionary businesses, you're going to see probably a shrinkage, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Those companies are struggling to have labor. I mean, guess what? Everybody's employed. So this is, you know, when you worry about, you know, a down market, we used to worry about that because it means 7 to 11% unemployment. Everybody's got a job that wants a job. You know, you can
Yeah.
feed your family, and so really, you know, this is, like I said, I think this is an economy that's trying to find its equilibrium, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
But it's just that prices and labor are having this war with each other, and they're going to continue to have that war until there's an excess of one versus the other. And I don't see they're getting to a point that in my crystal ball that I can see, and you know, like I said, what I know, I'm a chicken farmer from Alabama by trade, so you know, but my guess is you know, we're kind of in this 4 to 6% wage increase, which means inflation is going to be 4 to 6%. I mean,
Wow. Tracks
you
are
know,
long.
I mean, labor's in everything that you touch. I mean, so you don't get away with it. And oh, by the way, guess what? Guess who else is having wage inflation right now? All of those offshore people that we're buying labor from.
Hmm.
Their costs aren't going down; they're going up, and
Yeah.
at a rate that is actually higher. So anybody who's taking advantage of offshore labor, they're starting to get the 5 to 7% increases, you know, on that stuff as well. You know, so you know, it's just kind of the nature of finding a way. And so the way we teach it is, you know, first thing I want people to understand: are you a necessary? Or are you a discretionary? And
Yep.
so if you think you're necessary, just understand there's one further step. Who's your is your customer a necessary? If you're a B2B business, then is my customer a necessary or discretionary? So we teach like our IT MSP clients. Well, you know, you're a necessary, but your customer may be a discretionary. And so you
Yep.
may actually fall in revenue if you have a focus of a market segment that is highly discretionary in nature. And so it's kind of
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah, and you get into landscaping, hardscaping, outdoor living stuff. That can all wait. Let's
That's
be
right.
honest. That's
That's
not
right.
gonna. It's not food, water, shelter. That's none of those things, right? It's
But
not
but here's where
consumables.
it doesn't wait. So let's talk about the discretionaries.
Hmm.
So in the discretionaries, you got to take them and split them between. In the upper part is the highly desired discretionary. The bottom part is the I can do without. I can wait or do without discretionary.
Right.
And so the highly desired is where I perform a service or sell a product or both to someone who has disposable income of excess and they really really want what I do.
Yeah.
Now, there's a finite number of those people. That's not everybody. And
Yeah.
so I've got to understand my addressable market share and say I need to only try to grow to the actual group of people that there is a sufficient quantity of those people, you know, that fit that profile, because I'm not going to expand it to everybody else and succeed.
Makes perfect sense. And
Yeah.
if you're marketing out there to everybody with a pulse
Mm-hmm.
in a house, that's a problem. You know,
Right.
but if you're focusing on, say, healthcare, finance, or someone in IT, somewhere more insulated as far as the market goes, and they may have that discretionary income that they see as a high value of what you do, and doesn't really matter what the market's doing. They're going to do what they want to do because they have the ability to say yes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, um, I'd like to switch gears here, and actually, no. Before we do that, inflation for the next, I don't know, 6 months to a year. Obviously, we're going to see increases. You had mentioned the 5, 6%, or even between 3, 4, 5, 6%. Do we have any sense of where that might be going? Because every time that the inflation goes up, then our dollar value goes down, right? The buying power goes down. So
Mm. Yeah.
that helps make it more difficult for our clients to say yes to us, because each time they say yes a year later,
Yeah.
that dollar is worth less and buys less pavers, less plants, less everything. So
Yeah.
they got to bring more money to the table. So
Right.
what does that look like over the next 6 months to a year? What are you guys forecasting?
I mean, I'm a labor guy. I mean, I just, we don't have any excess labor, and so until we either find a technology breakthrough that creates excess labor, which also then creates unemployment, which is a bad
Mm-hmm.
thing. I think we're stuck in a 4 to 7% annual spiral of wage increases.
Wow.
And I mean, this is just basic economics of supply and demand,
Yeah.
because there's always been a belief. Think of it like this: there's always been a belief that at 5% unemployment is really full employment, and we've been under 5% unemployment forever, which means we're digging around at the people who are truly unemployed. You're at the bottom of the barrel of skill set. There's some issue that is keeping them from being the highly desired employee. Sometimes not by their, it could be an external factor, not necessarily the person, but they could have a limitation, of their schedule capabilities. They choose to live in an area that doesn't have the same economic profile. Although, like I said, I've not seen unemployment anywhere in the U.S. in any industry in the last 2 years, and
Yeah.
so I keep my ear to the ground all the time, and I keep asking this question every time I do a talk. I said, "How many of you personally know somebody who's unemployed?" And every now and then a person will raise their hand. I said, "Really? Is that person really unemployed, or are they just waiting for a better job?" And because there's typically a second wage earner spouse in the family that is working, and they can afford to not be desperate to go just take any job that'll feed their family. But if you want to feed your family, there's a job. It may not be the job you want. Definitely probably won't be the job you want. But you can. There's somebody that there's a nasty job kind of fills Mike Rowe's dirty jobs list.
Mm-hmm.
That, I mean, you can go get work. And until we get to that point that there's excess there, I mean, inflation has to go up. And I think that's why you see there's always a hope article in the Wall Street Journal about the Fed hopes that they think they've got inflation under control. And then there's 2 weeks later, 1 to 2 weeks later, a disappointment article. Inflation is proving to be stubborn. Well, no joke. I mean, it's proven to be stubborn because we have a shortage of labor. And it just
Wow.
is what it is. And we have fewer people coming into the workforce just by demographic shift. And so those are big.
So what are options for the U.S. to change that when it comes to the labor problem, the fact that everybody's employed?
Now, the options to change it always create a compensating negative outcome. I mean, I can improve inbound skilled immigration, but I'm going to bring down the value, and I'm going to take pressure off of the wage increases of those skilled jobs, and those people, will make less,
Yeah.
and that's not going to be looked on favorably. Australia, I thought, did something pretty innovative. I mean, they opened up last year 450,000 skilled visas that you could actually get approved in 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
And it really helped to bring in. We had clients in Australia that brought in people from other countries to fill their technical job needs that they couldn't fill. And so as long as that person's filling a job that could not be filled otherwise,
Sure.
then that's an economic positive. When that job comes in and takes a job away or depresses the escalation of wages of a skill set, that creates a compensating challenge. And I get it. I mean, those are hard decisions to make. I'm glad I don't get to make them. I just get to find ways to respond to them. So
Yeah, definitely a better spot to be in, right?
yeah.
So I'd love to switch gears with you here, Greg, and talk more about, or talk about here, the top three numbers we need to be watching in our businesses as we move forward. We can all take a look at the P&Ls or the balance
Right.
sheets or whatever it might be, but are there top three numbers that we should be looking at, or some quick strategy that we can look at just to make sure we're healthy as a business as we're moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the one I've been harping on, especially in the contractor trade, because of cost of goods sold being a major pass-through item. And so taking the emphasis off of revenue and focusing on gross margin. So I want to take revenue minus cost of goods sold that are materials and subcontractors to get to gross margin. And I need to be targeting a minimum profit of 15% to gross margin. 20% would be a good target. 25% is really top of class. Anything above 25%, hey, take it while you can get it. The market will probably compete you back eventually.
Got it. So you're looking at, you take revenue minus your COGS and subcontractors, and
Right.
then you take that, and it should be 15% to 25% being sweet,
Right.
like 15% being the baseline.
That's right.
And how does that work with owner's compensation? Where should that live?
Well, that means, so owner's compensation is before you get to that number. I mean, so I need a market-based owner's comp in my OPEX structure, so that is assuming that's, you don't do, I hate the concept of owner's discretionary income. I mean, that's just a bad metric that you should never use. And so the idea is your wage as an owner should be in management labor at a market wage. That what would you have to hire somebody if you just owned the business and hired a market person to go do your job, and that is a, you can guess at that number. There's enough data points that it's not as hard to figure out. You still got to have 15% profit after that number, or else you will not have enough cash flow, profitability, especially you can't take a shot. Because what I'm trying to do right now is get people prepared to take a shot. You're going to get a sucker punch or, pop your nose. The market's going to, there's going to be something that's going to hit. So I've got to hit that profit to gross margin number, because that's the cleanest number that puts everybody on a level playing field. And then secondarily, then I'm going to look at my total labor efficiency. When I'm at that 20% profit to gross margin, what is my gross margin? What's that ratio of gross margin to all labor, my direct labor plus my management labor? Most of the time, that number is going to be a 2. It might be a little higher, being a contractor. If you subcontract out everything and have very little direct labor, as a contractor, we generally use the 2 total LER standard. That number is probably going to be 2.3 to 2.5 potentially as a pure contractor. And that you just have estimators, salespeople, and admin labor, in your management bucket. You probably need $2.50 of contribution margin to all labor, when you're doing that. But you'll know. I mean, what you'll peg that number once you see your profitability is at 20%. Do I need to cut labor to get to that number, or need to push up margin to get to that number? But that'll be a good safe number. And then the final piece is, okay, I got to have my 2 months cash in operating expenses. So everything I don't get terms on, so all my labor plus my OPEX, I need 2 months worth of that in cash. And if I have those things and 0 drawn on a line of credit, I'm in as good a shape as I can probably hope for, to take advantage of the market. We even have people that are trying to lobby to have more than 2 months. I don't know that. I mean, if you do, keep it personally. Don't put it in the business yet until you need it. But I think if you do those 3 numbers, I think those are the keys to really put you in a, as we say, this is the year to get the hay in the barn. And 25, who knows? I mean, we got to get past November to see what 25 is going to look like.
Exactly. Wow. So, when it comes to, I know when I first, read your book and reached out and, got hooked up with Jack and have him come in and be our, we call him our CFO, right? He comes in, we used to do it monthly, now quarterly, where we'll get together and take a look, and you take all the numbers out of the business itself, you break them down in your style in order to give us the LER and give us all these different contribution margins, all those kinds of things. Like, you break it all down, and it makes it so simple for me as an owner, because I can sit back and say, okay, all right, Jack, how much runway do I got left? I always like to ask that question. So it's like, all right, I have this much in the kitty. If I were to sell nothing for the next X amount of months, how long could I go? Right. Just to give me a little bit of sense of what that looks like. And it's really extremely helpful having that dynamic and having that KPI to look at and say, okay, well, it is winter. Typically, it tends to be a little less aggressive here in Pennsylvania when it comes to sales. So if that's the case, how many months do I got before I've got to start selling things, right? Yeah, so, yeah. It gives us, it's like a dashboard in the car, right? It gives us all the information that we need. Do we got enough fuel in the tank? Do we have all that? How far can we go? So that's always been super interesting. When it comes to, contractors in general, is there anything else we should be watching, numbers wise or economic wise, as we wrap up here? Anything else that would help us through 2024 and beyond?
Well, I mean, I think you certainly need to get out and circulate, and don't live in a bubble. You need to, now granted, when you talk to other people in the industry, other people who feed you work, just have that discussion of, hey, what are you seeing? What do you think's happening? You'll find that most of them are operating off their gut and not off our data. Yeah. So, I mean, the person I like to follow on demographic stuff is Peter Zion. So that's ZEIHAN.com. And so I think that Peter's been pretty reliable, as an information source. I mean, certainly there's people, if you read the comment section of his little videos and stuff, there's people that will disagree with him and all that. But I mean, I found it to very insightful. But at the end of the day, I'm going to choose to. I see a lot of data myself of our clients, and so I'm believing what I'm seeing, and I'm taking input. I still read the Wall Street Journal every day, and you'll see the Wall Street Journal's writers have this flip floppy, effect to them. But I mean, like I said, I'm going to give them some latitude because there's one day they say it one way, and it's almost like they contradict that statement 3 or 4 days later, and they're struggling because they just don't have access to the data. And a lot of the economy now is in the private sector, not in the public sector. And so everybody's flying blind, for the most part. And that's why we do our 100 company model, because at least it gives us some little indicator of what we can do, to monitor things. And so, but I think you just got to get out of your shell and just, don't take one news source. Everybody's got snippets of the truth, and everybody's got snippets of excess or opinion, unfortunately. And I'm just looking for data, and I'll make up my own decision at the end of the day.
No, I love that, because there's one thing that I used to do all the time was I tried to work out of my gut the whole time. Right. It was always like, I feel like it's the right thing to do. I feel like it's the right time. It's the I feel, but I didn't have a whole lot of evidence, to your point, like actual data to back it up. It was like, yeah, this feels like the right time. It feels like the right move. And the problem was that I wasn't right most of the time, right? Until I started becoming more evidence focused and say, okay, that might be a feeling. Let's back it up with some evidence before we actually make this move. And that's what I love about, your process and simple numbers and having you guys on board, because we can make decisions as a company with full confidence because we have evidence to back up our decisions and our gut feelings, right? So it's not just like, all right, I'm just gonna use my gut like I've always used, and then sit there with a big black eye, in 2 weeks from now because of bad choice.
And I think here's the thing. I mean, we're not in danger of the economy going to zero.
Right.
Everybody's employed. So understand we're moving to a different mindset than we've had for the last 20 to even 40 years. In the last 40 years, we've been trying to grow. We've been trying to scale. And I'm not saying that you can't, but in that growth and scale, the vast majority of businesses were just trying to grow by keeping their share of the growth. Now, in a flat marketplace, if I want to grow, I got to take market share, and I got to take it away from somebody else. So in the last 40 years, you had a lot of businesses that could grow, and you didn't have to compete with anybody because all of us were growing. And now, okay, there's a finite amount of activity, and you're going to see, industry segments that had 15 competitors shrink to 10. But everybody's going to still have a job. But you just didn't need 10 businesses doing it. You need 15 businesses doing it. You need 10 businesses that were a little bit bigger and a little bit better. At
I like that. Yeah.
But, and so, I mean, it's not, I mean, and if you listen to some of Peter Zion's stuff, I mean, it depends on how you tune your ear. You can listen to it and you think it's doom and gloom. And it's like, and he'll turn around and say, no, this is really a good thing. I mean, this is, if you play the cards right, you'll be fine. And I think that's really the right way to look at it. But what you can't do, entrepreneurs over especially the last 20 years, really tried to grow their way out of problems. And I just don't know that in the vast majority of common industries, if you're a tech company or if you're creating the next greatest gizmo, okay, different discussion. But in the common everyday businesses of products and services, okay, I can't grow my way out of a problem most of the time. I've got to reset and then deal with market, from there.
That makes perfect sense. And I like how you're talking about it's not necessarily that the need for the service is going away. It's more about there's so many people that are serving that market that now there's going to be a consolidation of your 15 to 10 example, where you'll just have 10 companies growing slightly to absorb all of that employees and all the demand. But the ones that are inefficient, either through operational side or even through a sales process, if they don't have a way to be able to close work better than their client, than their competitions people do, then that's going to be a problem. The one that's going to be strongest can show the client the most value and a process in which they like and are excited about, that the other person's going to get it, whether it's a better product or not. At the end of the day, that's the crazy part. But it's more a matter of them being able to convey the value.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, Greg, anything else on your mind before we wrap up?
I think I don't want to overload their plate. I mean, that's enough to chew on right there. We'll save the rest for next time.
There you go. All right, Greg, I appreciate you coming on. And guys out there listening, if you haven't read Greg's book, Simple Numbers 2.0, I highly recommend going out to Amazon and getting a copy. It's changed the way that we do business here at Master Plan. And it's given us a lot more confidence and clarity on exactly what the next steps would be in business. Because let's face it, we don't have crystal balls. And we're just out there trying to look for the next newest, what's coming up, what is the economy going to do, what do our clients want, all that stuff. That kind of information creates a dashboard, just like in your car, and you can tell your engine's running hot, or you can tell you're low on fuel, or how fast you're going, or any of those things. So having a system like that is very important. So I appreciate you, Greg, coming back on. And if people want to reach out and find out what that could look like for their business, what's the best way to contact you?
Best way, you can reach out via email, greg.crabtree@simplenumberscri.com. Or you can there's a contact link on the simplenumberscri.com website. So,
perfect. Well, I appreciate you, Greg. Yep. Thank you so much. And everyone listening, see you next week.